We are looking at Law 9 now in Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Win through your actions, never through argument. And I lived through a perfect example of this morning with Lisanun Mubin in Malawi in conversation on WhatsApp with me, an American middle-aged man, an educator, currently living in Costa Rica. Right, so we have very disparate interests, naturally speaking. We have to work hard to find a place in the middle of a Venn diagram where our interests actually overlap so we can actually seek shared benefits. This creates a naturally challenging relationship because on the one hand, in his interaction with me, it would be natural to assume that he's seeking some way to get more, especially some kind of economic assistance by any means necessary, living in a country in the world with very few ways of getting money. And I am trying to not, lose too much in interactions where, he has extracted a little bit of money from me in years past to, for example, get a passport and then failed to do so, or take a bus across from Malawi to Zambia, where I was temporarily visiting some people for a week. I sent him money for that and he didn't do it. So I of course, am trying to not lose and not get scammed. So our interests, naturally speaking, are separate in a lot of ways. He's trying to get more, I'm trying to lose less, right? So that creates problematic ground to have a solid relationship. But I am trying as an educator and as a partial behavioral science expert from my work in education, I'm trying to get us towards shared benefits. So teachers and students also have a problem like this sometimes in class. There is a power imbalance, of course, between the teacher and the student. And the teacher is trying to work with the student towards shared benefits and not just be in a power struggle. So imagine, like I was talking about in a previous lesson, that a student comes to class in kindergarten. The little kid is 5 years old and is scared to do the work and doesn't want to be embarrassed trying to write their name. And so as they're writing, they learn that if they press hard on the pencil, the tip will break. And then they can go sharpen their pencil on the other side of the classroom where the pencil sharpener is. And so this student who's scared to write their name keeps breaking the pencil, and going over to the sharpener and going over to the sharpener. And what the teacher has to do is not just overcome the student with argument, saying, hey, I know what you're doing. You're scared of working on writing your name. You're scared of being embarrassed. And so you keep breaking your pencil so that you can go over there and do something else and waste time. Stop doing that. All right? That's not going to work, winning through argument. So to win through action, what I explained in another context was that the teacher would then take a much thicker, bigger pencil and say, oh, I see you're having difficulty here. So let's give you this big, thick pencil that won't break the tip, and you can use that until you start getting a little bit more practice, and then you can get back the regular thin pencil that all the other students are using. And that shifts the situation so that the student and the teacher can start working towards a shared goal together. The student wants to have the same thing as the other students. The student doesn't want to be embarrassed, and now it's automatically embarrassing to be the only one using a big, thick pencil in class. So the student who doesn't want to be embarrassed wants to get back to using the thin pencil, And the teacher wants the student to learn to write their name. And so they get into an alliance instead of a power struggle of the teacher trying to get more control and the student trying to escape the assignment. They move towards a center in that Venn diagram, okay, where they're seeking a shared benefit now, where they both get something they want if the student is learning to write their name and the student is getting the pencil back, okay? Now, in my argument with Lee Sanun this morning, it seems like, and artificial intelligence agrees on analysis, that they can lean too heavily on generating artificial responses to my messages to them in communication. As we work through various lessons on how to build teamwork, instead of being locked in hostile competition following the pattern of the 48 laws of power. How can we get to a place of teamwork? And I need honest communication as much as possible from them in order to find that thin little slice where even though we live in very different worlds, we can get to some shared benefits, but we can't really do that without getting to some honest communication. So I tried confronting some lies this morning, which is a perfect example of Law 9. And it felt like Lee Sanun was gaslighting me and hiding behind a mask. And these 4 laws, 9, 10, 11, and 12, this is going to be the Gemini section of life that we're talking about. My argument is that these laws follow a sequence from birth to death. And so when I refer to zodiac signs, I'm referring to developmental stages, not when somebody is born. But we're talking about that kind of tricky time of adolescence in the Gemini cycle. The Gemini cycle represents ages 14 through the end of age 20 until you turn 21. And so there's that struggle of maturation and developing skill. And it seems like Lee Sanun and his wife sometimes lean too heavily on software programs to generate responses. And I sent them an essay about certain cultural topics I thought were perhaps meaningful to share, but also a little bit too complex because it was a master's degree paper on complex literary concepts. And so in an attempt to continue conversation with me, Lee Sanun's wife, Rose, she sent me a message that was just perfectly polished, perfectly generic, academic, referencing various literary points in my paper that did not feel natural for a village woman in Malawi. It felt like an AI response. And when I put it through various AI systems, when I put it in to Grok was like, yeah, this looks AI generated. When I put it into other systems online, yes, they said also it looked AI generated. So I confronted him about it. And that was extremely uncomfortable. I mean, it could lead to just ending working together entirely. But what I need to look for is, can we find shared benefits? All right. You know, this goes back to the parable that Jesus also told of Matthew 13, 24 through 30. The parable of the weeds and the wheat. And when we think about how would it be possible to tear out some of the wheat with the weeds, you know, within my relationship with Lee Sanun, there are both weeds and wheat in his interaction with me. He is like a clump of soil. And if I just pull out and prove conclusively the lies and create alienation, I pull out some of the good that I'm getting to because he's the clump of soil under the weeds and the wheat. And I just pull out the weeds, I pull out the whole clump of soil, and that's how the wheat is destroyed. So I have to tolerate a little bit of potential deceit in there as I keep moving them towards the goals. But when I do push them, as I have pushed them in the past, on authenticity in their writing, they do tend to get more personal and more self-revealing, and it does feel less AI generated. So even if they never admit to using AI, I can still get to honest communication because they usually get more personal after I push them on generic responses.